Should they or should they not be paid? That is the question. We're talking about college athletes today on the Game Time Guru. So,
what time is it? Game time! Woo!
What's going on, everybody? Welcome back to the Game Time Guru. I'm your host, Shane Larson, and before we get started, as always, I just want to let you guys know that you can find me on Apple Podcast, Stitcher, Google Play Music. I'm on Anchor if you want to go over there and interact with me on a daily basis. You can also find me on Twitter at the Game Time Guru, and you can find me on Instagram at Game Time Guru. Now, I'm back in the house with Myles. You guys know Myles. He's been on the show twice now, and I just want to say welcome back. Thanks for coming on to the show as always.
Hey, thanks for having me, man. It's great to be back. I enjoy these so much that I actually started my own podcast because of you. So thanks for that, man.
Dude, okay. So let's tell the listeners about your podcast. You said you started one. I want everybody to know what you've been doing in the last couple of weeks and what you got going on.
Well, it's a bad podcast. It's not very good, but it's called 60 Days to Living. I actually have a YouTube channel where I go out and show like the side hustles I'm doing, trying to make extra money just for fun. And but yeah, coming on here and doing these things, like, man, I really like podcasting. I've always liked listening to them, so I decided, hey, you know what? I'm going to start my own podcast, 60 Days to Living. You can find it on iTunes. Anywhere else, I have no idea yet. I'm still trying to figure that crap out.
But you can find it 60 Days to Living. So go look it up on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. You can find it. It's actually really interesting. And his vlog is on YouTube. Is it the same name? 60 Days to Living?
60 Days to Living.
Cool. And then what about any social media? Do you have an Instagram account?
I do have a Instagram account, 60 Days to Living. Everything's the same, but I have
Keep it
Facebook,
consistent.
60 Days to Living. Don't really do much on there, but most of it is on YouTube and Instagram. So go take a look if you guys want.
Awesome. Yeah, he's got good work out there. Go check it out, 60 Days to Living. And so school's starting up this week, okay? I've been at work, and a couple of my friends are going back to school. And it's really happy for me. It's a happy time because it's the first time in my life that I don't have to go back to school.
Isn't it amazing?
Yes.
It's been about over a year and a half for me since I had to go back to school, and it's been the best.
It's an amazing feeling, and I'm still kind of in shock. But it got me thinking about my, college experience. And you and I have been friends for a long time, so we actually went through the college realm together. Just kind of, we understand what each other went through, and we had unique experiences in our own way. But your experience in college was unique, and I want you to talk about that for the listeners to get us started here. Can you talk about how you went through college? What was your college experience like compared to maybe the normal, traditional, quote unquote, student?
Yeah. So before I even started college, I had a goal. Like, okay, here's my goal. I am not going to take out any student loans. I'm going to pay for everything out of pocket. That was a goal that I had from the beginning. And so, I wasn't living on campus. I wasn't, hanging out down at school or anything like that. It was maybe non-traditional is what you call me. Like, you go to school and there's the older people who are coming back to school. Those are non-traditional. I'd consider myself a non-traditional student. I was going early in the morning and late at night. And the reason being is I was working full-time during the day. So work full-time, got married, same thing. My wife and I were like, hey, we're not going to take out any student loans. She did the same thing, went to school super early in the morning or super late at night and worked full-time. So both of us worked full-time.
Dude, so there were times when you were at school, you had to work your schedule around it. You just made it happen.
100%.
And do you remember when you told me you parked? You found you were parking at the park that was across the school and you took a nap or slept in the morning in the car over there or something?
Yeah.
So you had to find ways to make it happen. You were tired, but you made it happen working it around your schedule.
Yeah, so I had my first class one semester was at 7 in the morning, and then my last class got out at 10:15. So I got up, I went to the gym, then I went to class, and then I went to work, and then I went to class, and then I went to class, and then I went home and took a nap to go back to the gym, to go back to class, and repeat. So, it was... That semester was crazy hard on me, and not so much my marriage because my wife's super supportive, but it was a hectic semester.
Right. That's disgusting. I remember, yeah, I don't miss school in that sense because of the fact of working all the time and always having to adjust the schedule around it. Do you think you learned a lot from that experience, though, being able to manage getting all that done? When you got out of school, did it almost seem like you didn't have anything to do because you had so much time, so now you could occupy that time with other things?
Yeah, my life, I don't this isn't, it was almost boring. It was
right.
I only have 8 hours that I need to occupy in a day now. Instead of, 18, I now only have 8 that I need, that's all that I have allotted is 8 hours a day. What am I going to do with the rest? So it was awesome. Yet at the same time, I was like, well, what do I do?
Exactly. I'm in the same boat. I understand that because that was one of my biggest fears when I graduated in May. I was like, okay, I need to find something to do with the rest of my time before I get too comfortable having so much time to do nothing. So I wanted to be able to like just do things. That's why I kind of started the podcast and made sure I was still going with it, little things like that. Because yeah, during college, it was a grind. It was going to work, going to school, come home, go to work, go to school, come home, and gym every once in a while in the middle of that. So anyways, I'd like to take a step back real quick and maybe discuss some of the expenses and break it down to actual numbers so that the listeners can have a realistic viewpoint of, what the expenses were for you since you were a non-traditional student. And let's start with the gas money because you mentioned, and I know you personally, but you guys had to drive to school back and forth. Like just starting with gas money and then maybe some of the other expenses that you had while you were going through your college career.
See, we didn't have the luxury of living on campus.
Right.
No one paid for us to live on campus. We had to drive there. So my wife and I, literally, we both fill up our cars once a week. So that's $60 a week. And so let's say minus the school year, let's pretend we spent $35 a week times 52 weeks on gas. That's $1,820. So I'm probably just ranting. I'm so sorry.
I just want to hear it.
So after gas and all that other stuff, we're left with $7,580. Then utilities cost us $120 a month between the two of them, times 12. That's $1,440. Okay? So that's 0, that's 4, that's 1. So we're left with $6,100. Then we have to buy computers and stuff for school. Each year, pretty much you have to buy a new piece of technology. You don't have to, but let's say that's $1,000. So now I'm left with $5,140. I haven't even touched on groceries. Groceries, $300 a month. That's what it is. And let's say $300 a month. That's $3,600 a year. Okay, but you know what? Let's say we only spent $200 a month, so that's $2,400. So $5,100 for $40 minus $2,400. 0, 4, 3. 7. So I'm left with $2,700, $2,740. That's what I'm left with. And then there's all those other expensive, right? Like my wife needs clothes, she needs shoes. She's a woman, so she needs these types of things that I don't necessarily need. I don't think I bought any new clothes while I was going to school. I don't know why I'm talking in your mic. I'm sorry. But my wife had to buy those things, and then makeup's not cheap for women. If anyone's married or you're a woman, you realize how expensive makeup is.
Yeah.
So I'm left with $2,700. Okay, to live off of, to go enjoy my life, to go do these things, right? We can't just be hermits and live inside our house. That's what life costs. I'm sorry, and I'm probably undershooting, because I guarantee, this $2,000, $2,000 of this $2,700 probably went to eating out at fast food restaurants, which players are doing as well, which other people are doing as well.
Yeah.
So not to mention, I buy season tickets to Boise State, so I spend $500 there.
Did you ever get paid by the university when you were in school?
Never.
Never got paid. Why?
Never.
What's the deal?
A, I wasn't a student athlete. B, I wasn't smart enough to get any scholarships. But my wife and I were in that funky range where we made too much to get any grants or any aid or anything like that. And so it didn't seem fair because I had friends that weren't making that much money, but were getting all this help from school, and then they were still doing more than my wife and I, but they didn't even have jobs. And so my wife and I were working our tails off. I remember one summer I was going to summer school. I was working at the time, and then in between those times where I actually had some time to myself, I was going out and I was digging trenches for cash under the table. I was demoing buildings for cash under the table. I was doing things on the side to make money to allow my wife and I to actually go out on a date and do these things. So we didn't get any help from school. Because, maybe I'm not supposed to go off on this rant, but
I want to hear it.
So, 4 years of school, all right, so that's 8 semesters, and at Boise State, it's about $4,000 a semester after you take in consideration of tuition and books.
And parking. Parking's disgusting.
Unless you're broke, so you find ways around parking. So, 4 times 8 is $32,000. And then there's 2 of us, my wife and I. That's $64,000 out of our pocket, right? And so, we're still in school. We have these jobs. They're not it's not like my wife and I were making minimum wage. We're making okay money, but not great. But we're just making decent money that put us in that awkward position, like I said, to not get any help. And so we would pay for rent. we would pay for groceries, we would pay for car insurance, we'd pay for gas, and we pay for, everything that happens in a month, right? Okay, somehow my wife runs out of shampoo, mascara, and conditioner in the same month. That's $400, it seems. So you're paying for those things, and then any money you have left over, you put in a savings account because you're going to be paying that to the school each semester. And so, after all those things we pay for each month, and then after we pay for school, it's well, we're out of money. It was just...
I get you.
Yeah, there's no money. And so I'm super excited to talk about this topic. I'm not passionate. I am passionate about it just because I feel there's so much I just don't feel people are thinking of everything when it comes to this topic.
Well, that's perfect though. That's why I brought you on here because of the experiences you've had and the fact that you're a sports fan. I brought you on here because at times, especially with this topic, people don't think logically. They speak emotionally, and they don't really dive into it.
I might be speaking emotionally, just so you know.
Well, your emotions are based on your education because you actually are knowledgeable about the topic. So we're going to talk about it today, guys. We're diving into the world of whether or not college athletes should be paid. So in my last semester of school, I had the opportunity to have, a couple of my classes. I had a lot of athletes from Boise State University. I had about 6 players on the football team in one of my classes, and then I had one of the high-profile basketball players in my other class, and I got to see them every day. Our class started at 9 o'clock in the morning. One of them did, and the other one was at 11 or 10:45 or something. And it seemed like every time I was in class, they were always coming from a workout. They were always coming from their training or something like that. And they kept talking about how busy their days were. Because on average, apparently a student athlete will go 40 hours a week of training when they're not supposed to really go over 20. They typically go roughly 39 to 42 hours, according to USA Today, of training each week on top of their school. But they'd be talking about that, and I'm sitting there thinking, kind of like you were talking about, but I'm like, are you kidding me? I just went to work, got there at 6 in the morning. I worked 2 hours, came to school. I'm going to head right back to work from 1 o'clock to 5, and then I'm going to go to my night class tonight. So don't complain to me about this. So I had that opportunity to kind of connect with these players and see what their point of views were, but this topic of whether or not they should be paid came up quite a bit. Okay, let's talk about scholarship. So one of the biggest arguments that comes up is the fact that, these college athletes, most of them will get a scholarship, whether it be a full ride or a partial scholarship. I mean, there's a few walk-ons here and there, but typically the schools are paying their education. Do you want to touch base on that? How much that would typically cost, on average in your own mind? You kind of already talked numbers a little bit. What do you think would be, let's just talk about Boise State, like you just mentioned. What do you think the average scholarship would be for Boise State if they get paid to come and play football?
Oh, what I think the student athlete's getting paid?
Yeah, as far as what's the money the school's giving that athlete to come to the school to play football. They're getting a scholarship. How much do they pay for room and board? How much do they pay for books? And on average...
I have no idea, but I mean, so a semester is probably going to be $4,000,
mm-hmm.
right? And then you got to take into account living, which is rent and food and
mm-hmm.
all those different things. I mean, a student athlete, I wouldn't have the slightest idea.
Well, you're right on there. The only thing I think that we're missing is the room and board is typically around $10,000 per year.
So they get $10,000? That's just for...
That's for room and board.
Okay.
So it's their room and board. So, I mean, that's what the value is. I guess they don't get it in check, but that's the value of their scholarship. So at Boise State, it shows that an out-of-state student is getting roughly $33,600 per year to come to school and get their education paid for and live. And then that's also, they have their... I guess what would they call it, meal compensation?
Like a per diem for meals
yes,
or something?
Yes, per diem. Good. Okay, see, this is why I brought you on here. You have better vocabulary than me. So they get their per diem. But tuition is different for every school that you go to. That's the thing. So when I hear that argument, they get their scholarships paid for, that's how they're getting paid is they get a free education. Okay, well, every scholarship's different. Boise State, they have a lower tuition for a public university. Ohio State's, just a little bit higher than that. It's about $44,000 per year out of state students. And then UCLA is about $59,000 out of state. This is all come from USA Today. As far as my facts are concerned.
So wait, what was Boise State again? 33,600?
Yeah, out of state.
And then what was UCLA?
$59,000 per year.
Okay, so that's what? That's $26,000 more, which is significant. I wonder, I don't know, I don't keep up on minimum wage, but what's the difference between minimum wage in California and Idaho?
I wouldn't be able to tell you that. I would imagine it's a little bit different.
You keep talking. I'm going to Google that while you're talking through this.
Okay.
I'm going to see what percentage that is, okay?
Okay, so Myles is going to Google that. So we're talking about scholarships specifically. Student athletes are getting their scholarships. If you guys just take a second to hear me out here, $33,600 for tuition for someone to go to school at Boise State University. Just to give you guys an idea, that's about what an average job would pay you here, like a little over entry level wage. You're looking anywhere from $30,000 to $35,000 to $40,000 a year. Well, these kids are getting their education paid for, which is roughly the same amount, same value. So these scholarships are about the same, and depending on where you go and which school you go to, some have higher tuition than others. But I mean, realistically, to me, $33,600 in value for a scholarship is about what somebody would make. It's a very comparable to the wages that people make around the valley here in Idaho. So Myles is going to be Googling that and finding the minimum wage for California and talk about the percentages. Now, one other thing I want to talk about as well is the athletes. So not every athlete brings in a ton of money. Like not every athlete's Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel from Texas A&M. He was bringing in a ton of exposure, ton of money. Do you have the numbers there? Let's talk about that.
The percentage differences. So California to Idaho, it's 31% difference between minimum wage. So in California, it's $10.50, and Idaho, it's $7.25. So Boise State is $33,600. UCLA is $59,000. That's a 43% difference. So there is a little bit of a gap between like minimum wage and like school, but I think that kind of shows you like it's the difference is cost of living, right? Like
right.
If it costs more to live in LA than it costs to live in Boise. And I'm sure actually that 43% is really not that much, because to live in LA is probably astronomical. Like that's why all the Californians are selling their homes to move to Idaho, because they can buy a brand new house for the same money they were living in a 2-bedroom, half a bathroom apartment. Like, I mean,
it's true though. We're getting run over by all the Californians up here.
So I mean,
true.
The differences are there for a reason. So
yeah.
I just don't think that that's really necessarily valid. And then like if it's that point, like, well, Boise State doesn't pay me as much as UCLA for my education, be a better football player and get a scholarship from UCLA or from Ohio State. Like you get paid, like the bigger universities cost more to go to, but they also have a better football program or better sports program. And so you have to be a better player to get there. Like there's a difference in education level. There's a difference in athletics.
I like it. I can respect that. Let's talk about like the athletes then. Let's assume, let's say NCAA decides the schools aren't going to pay it. We're going to just pay it all out with the revenue and all of our profit that we make from sports. And we were talking about Johnny Manziel. Johnny Manziel was bringing in a ton of money for Texas A&M when he was there, right? His morals and his stunts in the public, those are things that you could question, but his athletic ability at the time that he was in college and the exposure he brought to the school was second to none. He had all this money coming in, but not everybody has that. So let's say you got an offensive tackle at Boise State University. No offense to anybody who's an offensive tackle at Boise State University, but they're not as well known as Johnny Manziel over at Texas A&M. But if the NCAA decides they're going to pay, how in the heck are they going to distribute the money equally amongst them? To me, I was trying to think about that. Like the NCAA should have a flat line across the board for all athletes, but it just doesn't make sense to me. Like there's no way to actually do that, because one person is bringing in a lot of money to the schools and the other person is not. That's my thoughts on that.
Yeah, that one's tough. I don't know exactly how they would, split that up, because like you said, the left tackle's not going to sell as much as the star quarterback. But that's the same in any business, right? Like the chief marketing officer gets paid. He's an executive, so he's going to get paid $300,000 a year, and he's barking out orders, and the person that's actually doing everything is going to be getting paid $40,000 a year. Like the same amount of work. Like both those people are needed to make that company successful, just like the left tackle's needed and the quarterbacks need to make that team successful. But it's just, I don't know, like life's just not fair. So like that bleeds over into sports. Like sports isn't fair. Like the center is just as important as the left tackle in the NFL, but tell me a center that's making as much as the left tackle.
There's not one.
Exactly. Like quarterbacks are more essential to winning, right? They're everything in football.
Right.
Like if you have a good quarterback, you build around it. But that's the way it is.
It's the way it goes. So here's the thing. So at this point, we're talking about, they're already getting paid through their scholarships. That's just kind of how it is. If you want to go to a bigger school, play better football, but they're getting paid through their scholarships. So what Myles is saying is that they shouldn't be paid an additional fund, like additional funds for the money that's coming into the schools. What a lot of people don't also realize is the fact that while the schools, like for instance, checking it on ESPN.com, they were talking about the expenses, and they talk about the revenue that the different sporting programs bring into the school. So I'll compare Texas A&M again because that was the top, and then I'll compare it to Boise State since that's where we both went to. Texas A&M in 2015 and 2016, this is all sports programs, not just football, but the majority of it comes through football because it's this major program. $194,388,450 was brought in. So $194 million brought in through their athletic programs. Boise State University, $46,611,688. The thing is we see those numbers, but if you go on there and you look at the expenses, some of the schools are actually in a deficit. And what I was reading up on was the fact that, while these schools have a lot of money coming in, there's also a lot of money that they have to spend to get these recruits to come in there. Rutgers was an example I saw. They put together they extended their football stadium, and now I guess they're in a $36 million deficit still, because the whole point of building and spending the money was the idea of bringing more money in the long run. Just like any business kind of it's like you have to spend to make money. And then Auburn, I guess they built this huge screen that you could see from close to 30 miles away is what they said. They spent a ton of money on that, and people were arguing, well, if you can spend the money on that, then why don't you pay your players? Well, it's because they're actually at a deficit in the athletic program, because there's a lot of expenses that go on to that. What I want to get into is one of those expenses is traveling. When I was talking with you about this a couple weeks back, you mentioned the experiences that these players get to have. You might not be getting paid in dollars, but you get these experiences, and you mentioned traveling, and I kind of want to see what you say about the other experiences. I want you to let the listeners know, what are the experiences that a student athlete gets that maybe you didn't get as a normal student, a non-traditional student, but you were a student at the university paying your own education. What are the differences, like the experiences they have?
Yeah, so I hope this doesn't come across as like, woe is me. That's not how this is supposed to be. Like, woe is me. My experience was awesome because I mentally told myself this is going to be awesome, and I made it awesome. But if you ask my wife, okay, what trips did you guys go on when you were going to school? I really can't. Maybe Lagoon in Utah, so a 5-hour drive for us. So there's our experience traveling.
Right.
These athletes, right? So Boise State, Virginia Tech, so Washington, D.C., Atlanta, Georgia, Arizona, California, San Diego, Hawaii, Nevada. Reno, gross. But they had all these different places that they've traveled to, and I'm sure when they go there, it's not like a vacation or anything like that. But when they go to these bowl games, it kind of is like they're doing their walkthroughs, they're having a good time. So just the traveling alone, and that's not free to a school. It's not cheap to a school. It costs money to take these players places. And so that's one thing that I think that they're getting to experience that many others aren't. So they're traveling all over the country, sometimes the world. And that's pretty awesome. I think if they were to sit there and say wow, I'm in Hawaii. I'm 21 years old. I'm in Hawaii. I'm getting fed. I'm getting taken around to all these cool places for a few days, after practice. That's pretty rad. And I could be wrong because I don't know what they do, right? I've never been a student athlete, so I don't know what they're doing when they're there. But if they are doing those things and they take the time to realize it, they have some pretty rad experiences.
No, absolutely. They're like once-in-a-lifetime opportunities. Like you mentioned, Hawaii is I know that Boise State's team went there a few times when I was in school. Obviously, they would play Hawaii, and they get to go to see Pearl Harbor and stuff like that. And this is on top of getting their education paid for.
Yes.
This is on top of that. So these are those once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, not to mention the people they meet. It's the networking. They get to meet some of the coolest people, especially in the sports world, which is what their passion is, obviously. So that's one thing you brought up was the networking. Networking's huge. I know that you told me when you were in school that that was one of the biggest things you take away, and I always tell people that too. While your education is good in its own way, at times, sometimes that education kind of what's more important and more valuable in today's world at times is the networking you do while you're in a university. You meet professors, you meet all these people that come through. these student athletes get to meet a ton of people, guest speakers that come in and talk to them during their practices, people they get to meet when they're on the road. If they go to a bowl game, they probably have somebody come in and talk to them there too. They're going to meet all these cool people, not to mention other athletes that are probably going to make the NFL or NBA or whatever sport it may be. They just network, and that's on top of the once-in-a-lifetime opportunities, these traveling events, and the friggin' school education that they're getting, that's all paid for. This is all on top of its domino effect.
Like, I think the networking is bigger than anything. Like you mentioned, I think it's bigger than the school. I think it's bigger than the experiences. Like, there's that one saying, it's like your net worth it equals that to, like, I'm gonna totally destroy this quote, but like, your net worth is the average of your 5 most closest, like, people or acquaintances, right? And so, like, actually a few months ago, I was sitting there and I was thinking, okay, like, what are the 3 most important things for me to be successful and to be happy? And number 1, I actually have it right in front of me because it's just in one of these books that I carry around. And the first thing I put was surroundings. Like, it is your surroundings, no doubt. Mm-hmm. Like, the networking. They're building. Oh, man, I would kill for the networking they were able to have. Like, I had to leave my old job, take a pay cut, come to this new place where I work to have the possibility of networking with people that I want to be around. And so these people don't even have to do that. They don't have to take a pay cut. They get to play sports, do what they love, and network.
I see, and the thing is to go along with that, all these experiences that they're having, some of these kids wouldn't even be in school if they didn't know how to play sports. So they're not realizing, I don't want to say, well, I do want to say it, it's entitlement. They think that because they're so good at sports, they should have this and this and this. They're going to these schools. These schools are bringing them in to their universities, giving them these opportunities simply because they can play sports. How many people do we know can hardly pass a class, but they can play great football? So these kids don't realize that it's football or basketball or whatever sport it may be that's bringing them in there, and they're not taking advantage of all these things. Granted, you bring up great points. These are the things they get paid with, quote unquote paid, right?
Yeah.
They're getting paid with all of these things, which is much more valuable than, let's say, $100,000 a year, which brings me to my next point. Let's talk about money. Let's assume they do get paid, right? I'm reading up in an article, and they talk about the average scholarship is, what did they say, $45,000 a year, and then, well, $20,000 for room and board, which seems about right for Boise State, or a little bit more, and then $45,000 tuition. This is all out-of-state tuition, right? Mm-hmm. So $65,000 on average for a person to come to school, full ride scholarship with room and board, and they pay. Let's say they scratch the scholarship and say, okay, well, you're going to come play sports for us. You're going to make, the school's going to make some money off of you guys because of the athletics. So we're just going to give you $100,000. We're going to pay you $100,000. Myles, what is so whenever you make an income, what happens with the money that you're making at work?
It's taxed.
Ding, ding, ding. It's taxed. And do you know the percentages or just any kind of idea of what you get taxed on average? Isn't your wife an accountant or something?
Yeah, but it doesn't rub off on me or anything. But I think so. If they give him $100,000, and I don't know anything like that, but if I'm going off of trying to think of relevance to my paychecks, they're probably taking home after taxes and maybe medical. I don't know what all is covered, but probably 65 to 73% is what they're taking home. So if they're getting $100,000, let's see if they're lucky, they're taking home $70,000. And then 20 of that, you just said, goes to room and board. Mm-hmm. And then how much of that goes to school?
$45,000 for the tuition portion.
Okay, so they're left with, if they're lucky, they're left with $5,000. If they're not lucky, they're left with $0. That's not a lot, just in case anybody's wondering. That's no monies.
So it's actually a really interesting point to bring it up because people don't think logically. We said this earlier, when we're bringing up this topic, a lot of people speak on emotion. They don't think logically. There's no way you can give a kid a scholarship and give them additional money. So that's the first thing. Okay, the schools aren't going to give you a full ride scholarship and then here's $100,000 on top of it. They're going to go one or the other if they were to do this. This is our argument. They give them $100,000. It's taxed, just like Myles said. They're not going to come home with a lot of money. And in fact, it's not smart for the student, for one, because they're not going to have a lot of money to spend because whatever's gone is gone. Then, if they don't have any money, they don't have any money to spend for food. They don't have any of that. So, they're probably not going to have their meal compensation, stuff like that. And then for the school, they might as well just give them the $65,000 worth of a scholarship instead of paying the individual $100,000 because it's $35,000 more. So it doesn't make sense for the school. It definitely doesn't make sense for the student. Now let's assume that like these kids let's just say they pay the athletes a ton of money and they come out and then let's just say they have like $100,000 just to spend. How many kids do you know? How many kids do you know could handle $100,000 when they're 18 years old?
Like honestly, probably none. Like there's very, 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 very few. Like I'm still blown away. I'm almost 30, and I'm still blown away when I talk to people, my age, my friends, and it's like, money comes up when you're at this age, and it's like, wait, you don't have any money in savings? Like not a penny? Like they're 30 years old and they're not responsible with their money. How is an 18-year-old going to be responsible with their money? Like there's the few that will be smart with it, but probably not most. Like if I think back to when I was 18, I was saving money, but I was also buying stupid stuff.
Right.
And like I don't think I'm special. I don't think I'm abnormal, but I was saving large amounts from each paycheck even at 18. I've always been frugal and cheap, and you can ask any of our other friends, I have alligator arms at the table. Someone else is going to pay for that bill, not me. Like so that's just how my mind works.
Right.
I'm cheap.
No, but you're smarter than the average bear when it comes to that.
False.
Okay. So you're decent with your money, as you said. Like you know how to save. But if we even look at like that documentary, do you remember that 30 for 30 broke?
Yeah, totally.
So,
that was awesome.
It was one of the best ones I've ever watched, and in fact, I love watching it still. It talks about the professional athletes and how they don't know how to spend their money. They're professional athletes, so when they get to the pro rank, they don't know how to spend their money. I think they mentioned Cam Newton didn't know how to cash a check. Now, a lot of this I think falls on the universities. I think they need to let the kids have some real life experiences. I think the kids need to learn how to like cash a check, open up a bank account. Granted, when you're on scholarship, they're not allowed to work. They can't make an additional income. There's a certain percentage you can work each day and throughout the year off in the off season. So you're not allowed to actually make an additional income. So I think there are some limits to these student athletes.
That part I think is garbage.
So what would you do if you wanted to fix it? Would you allow them to kind of be like just give them free reign and say, if you want to go work for your money, as long as you're getting your other work done and you're coming to practice every day and you're performing, you can do it?
Yeah, and I think, you'd probably have I'm already practicing 40 hours a week. I'm going to school the other hours. Like I don't have time to do anything else, which totally get that. Like, but I did that. You did that.
Right.
Like we went and did side jobs to make additional money while working 40 hours, while going to school full time. So there is that. But I think the student athlete should totally be allowed to monetize their name, their brand. Like if that takes away from how they perform on the field or in the classroom, then obviously there's repercussions for that, right? Like you start taking away their scholarship, or they have to pay for it, or they lose their scholarship altogether, right? But they should have the ability to monetize their own name and brand. Maybe not through the school's apparel or things like that, but there's no reason Johnny Manziel shouldn't have been able to take on sponsorships, right? Like he was the biggest name in football for a year, like NFL or college. Like it was Johnny Football. So I think he should have been able to monetize his name any way that he wanted to.
I totally agree. And that brings up another point. Like if they're going to get paid, let it be with what they're doing on the side. Not necessarily the sport that they're playing. They're already getting their scholarships. They're already getting everything we've spoken about prior to this. But if they want to do something on the side, let them be paid for that. This UCF kicker, this just happened 2 or 3 weeks ago.
The YouTube guy, right?
Yes,
yeah.
YouTube guy. So basically, for anybody who doesn't know what was going on here, the kicker over at UCF lost his scholarship and is kicked off the football team because he was monetizing off of his YouTube videos. And the reason he lost his scholarship is because he was doing YouTube videos on his life as a student athlete, which to me personally, I find that intriguing. I would watch that.
Me too.
That's amazing. I think everybody should be able to watch that. Like, what's the life of a student athlete so that we can have a better idea of what they go through every day.
Yeah, maybe we're totally off.
Exactly.
And if we are, we're sorry. If we're not, then we're not.
Well, here's the thing though, like that guy has a great idea, which is why he probably was making money off of it, because people probably wanted to watch stuff like that. And the school says, no, you're using your status as a student athlete to make money. Can't do that. Whoopity-doo. He loses his scholarship.
Why can't they use their status? So that's what blows my mind. Like, there's just these arguments like, I'm on the side, don't pay the athlete, but why put them in a box? Let them do what they want to do to make additional money. Like, half these guys could make a killing just signing stuff and selling it. Like, didn't AJ Green get in trouble for signing a jersey?
Signing a jersey.
Yeah. Dude, let him do that. Like, let him monetize his name or his signature. Like,
It bothers me too, because I'm a Buckeye fan. Terrell Pryor went through a similar situation. He was selling his memorabilia from his games for tattoos, and then he gets suspended, and there was a whole fiasco and didn't come back. So while people thought that was crazy, I was like, dude, it's his stuff. He can do what he wants. If he wants to sell it to get a tattoo, let him sell it to get a tattoo. It's not affecting anybody else. Like, it's not affecting anybody.
Seriously.
So that's where I get a little bit frustrated. I think we're on the same page, though, as far as paying their astronomical amounts of money for the sport that they're playing. No, but if they're going to go out there and try to work for it, a guy from LSU did Forex trading, and he didn't get in trouble for that. So I actually am curious to read more up on.
Yeah, I remember this guy. Was he the offensive lineman or whatever?
Something like that.
Everyone was coming to him because he was just killing it. Wasn't he making like $200,000 or?
He was making a lot of money.
Yeah, he was slaying it.
There was an article on like Sports Illustrated or something about him. He was doing Forex trading, learned how to do trading while he was in college, and that's what he would do in between classes and stuff. And I guess he didn't get in trouble for it, and he came out and talked about it. And maybe he did, I don't know, but it didn't seem like he did. So I'm curious.
That's like the foreign exchange. That's where you buy different currencies and sell it on blips, like lows, sell on highs, buy on lows. But I remember reading that article. I think you sent it to me. That was a sweet.
It was actually really cool. Myles will be doing a podcast this week. Actually, tonight he's going to record it on Forex trading and the ins and outs and how you do it 100%.
Yeah, if you guys want to lose all your money, listen to that.
So, I mean, I think we're coming down to the point of, yes, they should be able to monetize off of stuff that they do themselves. If they're going to, do their job and they're going to work, but they can still get their job done as a student athlete, I don't find a problem with that. I do not find a problem with that at all. The only other thing would be you have to find a way, like, you're going to run into this issue because the women's sports versus men's sports saga, it's never going to end. They feel like they're treated unfairly, but let's just compare. How many women's basketball games do you go to at Boise State? We're not trying to like dog women's sports. I've already done a podcast on this and discussed the struggles, but just be real. How many women's basketball games did you go to when you were at school?
Women's basketball
games?
games?
Yeah, women's basketball games. Be honest.
I went to 0.
0. Okay, that's not any different than the majority of the Valley here in Boise, Idaho. I think they averaged last year, because in my class, they actually did a project on women's basketball. They were having like 400 people come to the games each game. That's very low. So what that means, for anybody who wants to understand, like, to open up the arena and have the lights going and all the sound systems and all that stuff, it costs the exact same amount of money as it does for the men's sports to come and play, like the men's basketball team. It's the exact same. It's the same as the WNBA and the professional level. It costs the exact same to travel. They have to fly them to places. It's the same expenses, but they're not bringing in the ticket sales or anything like that. So they're not making the money for the school, whereas the football team and the basketball team generate the revenue to pay for that deficit that the women's sports are in.
Yeah, I think, I'm probably blaspheming again, but I think there's only like 5 colleges in the country where a program outside of their football program makes money. So I think like Duke, North Carolina basketball make money, and a few others, but like the only money they really make is from football. They, like you said, they run at a deficit in every other sports. It costs money to do all those things. And so women's basketball, men's softball, men's baseball. Boise State just cut the wrestling team because it wasn't profitable, and like just yeah, sorry.
But no, that's right. And I think you guys can Google that and find some information on it. There are very few schools in the country.
Yeah, please fact check everything you hear.
There's probably like 400 schools all across. I don't even know if there's 400 schools that exist, but
yeah, again, fact check.
Yeah, fact check us. We don't talk.
The only thing that's 400 is 400 errors on this podcast. We probably just everything's wrong.
If you guys want to do a podcast on all the errors, I'd be down to sponsor it for you as long as you shout out my name.
Yeah, me
so
too.
To finish up here, we wanted to.
Well, real quick, I mean, did we cover everything that you wanted to? I know, like,
yeah,
here's the thing. I feel like we you can almost talk yourself into a circle on this topic, right?
Yes.
Like, it almost is, like, situational. I don't know, man. It really is. Like, it's a player-by-player basis almost, but at the same time it's not because, like...
Well, no, it is true. I just wanted to have an open forum, basically, and kind of use some of the arguments that everybody uses. To finish up, though, I kind of want to ask you a question, Myles. So if you're coming out of high school, you get to work with a lot of entrepreneurs. We won't mention names or anything, but you get to see the entrepreneur lifestyle. And a lot of these people don't go to college. Some of them just decide they're gonna go and make their own money. If you're coming out of high school and you're good at something, do you think you should have to go to college before you can actually get into that profession?
Oh, no.
Okay.
I don't, and I think I know where you're going with this, so I'll let you take us there.
Okay. Well, I mean, so that's the issue. That's why I kind of did a podcast about the one and done rule the NBA made for basketball players, and the NFL has their own rule where you have to be 3 years removed from high school to be able to get into the league. So these kids are almost in a sense forced to go to school. There's a lot that don't care about school. We know that a lot of them don't even go to class when they're there. They just stay academically eligible during the season, and then they bounce when they're ready to go, especially the basketball players, Ben Simmons being one of them. Do you think that these rules of, forcing these kids to go to school is a good thing if they're not going to pay them? If they're good enough to already go at the professional level and make money doing it, do you want these rules to stay in place, or do you think we should remove them then?
I think they should be removed, right? Like, if a player wants to skip college and go straight to his profession, whether that's the NBA or the NFL, Major League Baseball, you can go straight and play professional baseball. You don't have to go to college. There is a lot of levels you have to go through, but I think if they want to skip college and go straight there, go for it. Like, if I want to start a business, I don't have to go to college and learn about entrepreneurship to start a business. I can just go do it. And I think, there's a lot of other people who can do the same thing. They don't have to do certain things to achieve their dreams. And I think that the rules in place that students have to go to college, I understand that. Some of them are for their benefit, like to help their bodies mature, to help their minds mature, to help all those different things. But I feel if they don't want to go to school, they shouldn't have to.
I'm with you on that. That's something I've been tossing back and forth in my head. While it would be, especially in football, you have to protect the individual. They're going into a league of guys that are bigger, faster, and stronger. But my belief is this. There's a very small percentage, according to the NCAA, their stats that came out, very, very small percentage of athletes, like 4% of football players or even less, go to the pros and stuff. So these guys that are ready to go to the pros, the ones that will play professionally will play professionally. The ones who won't. So I think that in any sport, you should be allowed to just go and do it, especially if the school isn't even going to allow you to monetize off of your own content that you're producing on YouTube, crying out loud. So I think that's where the issue lies, is those rules that are set in place. And who knows, maybe one day we'll see something change, or maybe one day we'll see a change in the rule for them to allow you to do a YouTube video or YouTube channel and monetize off of that. I think that there will be changes in the near future, though. So before we get going, Myles, do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to share with us?
My parting words is the NCAA needs to review a lot of its policies and procedures, like from top to bottom. If a player declares and they don't get drafted, I think they should have the ability to go back to college and mature and grow both physically and mentally and, academically. And that rule I hate. I hate a lot of other rules. So I think in the end, the NCAA has a lot of evaluating to do. Should they pay student athletes, if you ask me? No. Should they change some other things? Yes.
We're going to go ahead and end the show today with you guys. We appreciate you listening in. But before we do, Myles, will you give one more, shout out about your own station so that the listeners can remember where to find you at?
Yeah, so you can find my YouTube or iTunes podcast at 60 Days to Living.
That's 60 Days to Living without any spaces. Find him on YouTube for his vlog, and find him on iTunes. Guys, you want to follow Myles. If you like entrepreneurship, you like side hustles, you just want to follow a normal guy that is getting the job done, you want to follow his stuff. He's got some good stuff coming for you in the future. For us right now, we'd like to say thanks for listening in. And once again, I'm Shane Larson, the host of the Game Time Guru. We'll talk to you next week.